This is a recording of the advice given by Her Holiness Mataji Nirmala Devi on the first day of the 3-day Shibir held at Bordi from 26 January to 29 January 1977.
I'll try to cover most of the points that you have asked, but I must say that I was very happy to hear most of the questions because that shows that your inquiry is getting subtler and subtler. That you already know about the gross side of chakras, and now you want to know the subtler forms. Now, the first question was which should be taken up first is the one how the chakras come into human beings, what time, what stage of life, because that should be the first question. This question is something if you ask what time a primule comes into the being of a seed, it's something like that. That a human being, when he dies, as I have told you before, he does not die fully. Only a part of him dies, which is mostly the earth element, and the rest of the elements remain there. The rest of the body disappears, and we can't see it because it is not a complete human form. It goes on decreasing in size, and the Kundalini leaves the body and stays outside the body. And the Atma, what we call the spirit, also leaves the body and stays outside the body, which is the remaining body. The constitution of this new body is different from our constitution. We can say a light that is extinguished has all the body except for the light, but the light goes out of that body. In the same way, in a human being who dies, the spirit and the Kundalini leave the body, but they are around that body. And it's a great procedure that follows, which is fantastic. It's unbelievable how the body disappears into different elements also. But first of all, let us see when such bodies which remain like that, they go into what you call the Pretalok. There they become seeds, or they can become smaller and smaller and smaller, till one body forms, a ova and a, which you know as a sperm. In one body it is formed. I don't know if you have seen the division of chromosomes, how it takes place. It's a complete division. If the chromosome is like that, it's a complete vertical division and a complete separation takes place. That is why marriages and selection of partners, all these have a great place. For ordinary bodies, it does not matter. For the divine, they take place in such a manner that there can be at random connections established. For example, a ova of one may combine with the sperm of another. It happens at a very lower stage of evolution, Among human beings also it happens like that. For some people who are just not very evolved, we can say. But mostly the ova rejects the sperms. It only accepts that sperm which is meant to be accepted. Now it is such a minute work, it is so fantastic that it is unbelievable. We have no idea as to how God works out. It's absolutely tremendous that even the ova goes on rejecting the sperm that is not the second part of itself. And that's how so many sperms are wasted and so many ovas are wasted. So you can imagine that there is a tremendous machinery which is working out this. Especially people who are realized, when they are reborn, and all the forces of the divine combine to see that this ova is placed with a person who is ultimately going to meet the person who has the proper sperm, so that there is no problem as far as the meeting is concerned. And the divine takes all the care of these great souls. The work of the divine is very, very fantastic, and it is beyond human conception to understand how the awareness of God can look after all the minute small things of the world. You cannot do even a small thing like attaching this to this one unless until you pay some human attention. So you can imagine the attention of God who invades so many seeds in this Mother Earth and gives you such huge big trees. I mean, you have taken them for granted, but if you watch, you will feel the fantastic dynamic force behind it, which thinks it, which does it so perfect. But we think that it is all automatic, and that's how we can bear it. And that's how we can bear Sahaj Yoga, also thinking that it is all automatic. The second question is, when did the chakras then are in the body embedded? They exist in the body and they go on existing. Of course, they get corrected every time the body takes birth and goes into a new seed. And the Kundalini also. Every birth you are born is watching as to what you are doing, how your chakras are developing, how it is working out. And through the method of balancing you or parasympathetic system, or you can call universal unconscious, the chakras are brought to its proper shape and to its proper condition by evolution. A man makes mistakes, he makes searches, he searches from one place to another. For example, he may start his search in money, then he starts his search in power, then he starts his search in love, the carnal love, or he may start his search in some emotional expressions, then in art and all those things. Ultimately, he finds that the search has not been all right because he has not been able to achieve any state of joyous existence. And with his search, these chakras go on evolving and understanding. Now we have to know that these chakras are absolutely living entities, because when a person is supposed to be dead, that time all the deities are not in the working state. But the living man has the chakras which has got the deities which work out the different functions of the chakras. It's a very, very subtle working, and these can be called as the reflecting mirrors at different levels of our awareness, where the deities which are placed in the primordial being, the Virata, are reflected. And they, once awakened, start working out the plans of the divine. In some of the human beings, when they are searching these chakras, find that the person or the subject is going to the extremes of things. And this comes because a human being has got freedom to choose. And in his freedom, he goes to the extremes. And by going to the extremes, the chakras get damaged. Going to the extremes is what we call is sin. To be in the center, to lead a moderate, simple, balanced life, and stick to the values of our sustenance is the best life. But if you start going to the extremes, then the sin starts. And the sin, in the Bible it is written that the wages of sin is death. So the death occurs. Now the death actually, doesn't take place, but what happens is that a part of the chakra gets damaged. It can be a physical hankering, it can be mental, it can be emotional, it can be spiritual, it can be anything. If you go on working out an imbalanced solution, then these chakras get spoiled at different points. That's how your chakras get spoiled. The chakras are according to our awareness in different states. For example, for a doctor or for all of us, we know that we have plexuses in our body. We know we have different plexuses. Like we can say pelvic plexus, we've got solar plexus, we've got aortic plexus, we have got cardiac plexus, we have got cervical plexus, we have got optic chiasma, we've got limbic area to act, or we can say pituitary and pineal body act optic chiasma, and then we have got limbic area where we have got certain points which are active. This every doctor knows because they have even tested the limbic area of some monkeys, and they found that if you excite the limbic area of the monkeys, they feel very joyous with electricity. So all these chakras in the body of a human being are only felt as gross expressions, which we call as plexuses in the parasympathetic and sympathetic channel. They are all connected, as I have told you, that the sympathetic comes from both the sides and creates the central channel, and that is the parasympathetic. So it depends on the balance of both these sympathetic that the parasympathetic works out well. When the balance breaks up, any balance can upset both of them, and when it is completely broken, then they become on their own, and that is how it is the complete so-called liberation of man from God's grace. Once he is completely liberated from that grace, he starts falling into the state of, as we call them, Rakshasas. He goes to hell. He goes to the other kind of awareness where there is no feeling, no consciousness of conscience. He doesn't think twice. He can kill 100 people without even feeling bad about it. He loses all his emotional side, and also he loses all his wisdom. What remains in him is his own ambitions and his own desires or his depravity. And he goes on without feeling any compunction or any binding from the divine or his own dharma. So these chakras are very important for us because first of all they give us the balance for our everyday existence. They give us God, and we can think of subtle things and abstract things. This all comes through the help of the chakras. If you ask me if the animals have the chakras, they have, but they don't have all of them separated. Sometimes they are confused chakras, and all the chakras are not separated from each other, and they are not all open out because of their evolutionary process is not yet complete. But some animals I've seen have got a awakened kundalini, and they are realized animals I've seen. So it is possible even for animals to be very dharmic than men are, and sometimes it is surprising how they can discriminate better than human beings can. Apart from that, animals are kept under the bondage of God, and whatever is their sustenance is done by them. They don't have to think about it. For example, a dog is a dog, a cat is a cat, and a tiger is a tiger. So only the human beings can be a dog, can be a scorpion, can be a snake, and can be a saint. So it's only possibility in the human being that you can find all the animals existing side by side, and can be any time these animals can come out, and you may be surprised at yourself the way they suddenly jump out and start barking at you. So that is what human beings are, because whatever has been our past is within us. Whatever animals we have been is within us. So all that is there. But whatever we are going to be also is there. Whatever we are going to achieve is also there. For human beings, the future, past, present exists, but for God it does not. So for him to plan and to organize and arrange is very easy stuff, because if you do not have such demarcating things, you just organize things much better. And his methods are because of his own, I should say, awareness, a status, a almightiness, I can say, or it's just his nature that he's like that he can manage things very well. And you cannot explain them with one event after another event, how he has managed and how it has happened. He does it just because he is capable of doing that. He need not do it all that with understanding or thinking about it as human beings do, because he does not have to think either, because he is that. You see, he is the power and he does everything. He is the consciousness, so he does everything without putting any effort into it, and is a very different state, which perhaps you can understand as Sahaja Yogis, that just you move your hands and you find the Kundalini moving the other side. Now you may say, why is it moving after all? You must think about it. You are realized, so you can do it, but not a person who is not realized. If he puts his hand like that 100 times, nothing is going to work out. Only you can raise the Kundalini. The reason is your awareness is different and his awareness is different. Your powers are different and his powers are different. So in the same way, God, who is all power, for him, even moving his finger, he can move the whole universe. After all, he is God. And that's why for human beings it is said that you better have faith in God, because that's the best way you can solve your problem. If you go on thinking about it, you'll all go crazy. So we have to go to a point where we can understand him, otherwise we will all go crazy understanding him, and we'll all become mad thinking what all these things is beyond us. It is too much. So because in Sahaj Yoga now your awareness has come really to such subtle form. One can understand so many things and can understand the subtler ways of God's doing, and also understand what is possible for you through subtle methods. We can talk of subtler things, but talking this to anybody who is not a Sahaj Yogi would be something madness. They wouldn't understand a word what I am saying. It's only meant for the people who are Sahaj Yogis. So we came to a point where I said that in the gross they are expressed as plexuses in the human being. Now this is known as the gross way. Now the subtle form you have seen, the sukshma as they call it, the subtle form. The subtle form exists in the human being, which you can see, you have seen it. The subtle form as energy when it starts pulsating, you have seen the pulsation. But this subtle form is in two forms, you can say. One is a sukshma and another is ati sukshma. Because in the sukshma you can see, and a person who is a realized soul. If you are a realized soul, then you see even the chakras. In the sense you can feel the chakras on your fingers. A unrealized soul can see the pulsation of the Kundalini and the different chakras with his own eyes. He can. If he watches it clearly, he can see the different chakras clearly. And you as Sahaj Yogis can feel them on your fingers and also can feel them within yourself in the collective consciousness. There is, we can say, in the second stage of Sukshma, there are three stages. As you can say, Sukshma, Sukshmatara, Sukshmatam. Three things you can see. The first stage you see is on your fingers, is the Sukshmatara, you can say. But with the eyes you see is a Sukshma. And with your fingers or on your chakras when you feel, it is, you can say, is Sukshmatama. So you see them in three forms. If some of the people do not feel it on the fingers, can feel it on the chakras also. So you can feel it in three ways. But there's a fourth way, where we can say it is in the Karana state. That's a higher state where the realized soul can feel it, who is born as a realized soul can feel it. And in that state, they just know, like a computer. They don't bother as to which is the one, and they don't put hands or anything. They just feel it. It is so. As you have seen in my granddaughter's case, she just knows what is what. Just you ask her, she'll just immediately say, this is this, this is this. Like, it comes plain to them, absolutely, this is this. Now, you may say that, how do they know? But the procedure becomes such a compact thing. I mean, it just happens to you. Like, you pinprick me here, and immediately the hand goes back. You see, it's sort of, the whole reflex action is so quick that we can say there's no procedure as such, but it's just a reflex action. In the same way, it acts as a reflex action, so that you see, you don't have to worry about the purpose of it. That is the state where you say the Karana state is. And the Mahakarana state. Now this is the third stage, is it? And even in the Karana state there are three stages into which one feels it. Now that is, I would say that I need not explain, because that's beyond you people. But if you are born realized, you will understand that the imbalance in a personality, see, of the three gunas, is immediately perceived by a born realized person. Immediately perceived. He can see through. You see, that's the wisdom he has gained in his previous lives and previous births. And immediately they can see the imbalance that comes in. You see, and whatever they say is so wise, and they understand because they can see the imbalance of these three gunas, and according to their own gunas,